Liam, it's good to catch up. First of all, just how do you reflect on the game with Wolves and just generally your league position now as we resume championship action for the rest of the campaign?
Two there, right? I think Wolves, in terms of I think similar. It was a good learning experience. I thought second half, especially, we came out and probably showed a little bit more belief, a bit more, confidence in our identity and the level we can hit. There was some really good bits second half, and even first half. Some of the press at times was really good, and then at other times, when you're playing against that level of opposition and that level of player, when we didn't quite get it right, they went through us, and obviously had that kind of 15-minute spell where they were extremely dangerous. But we spoke to lads about it. I think it's great learning for us. I think it's I keep saying about it, but we're constantly working to improve and to get better. And the weekend was another experience for us to learn from. So it was like I said, disappointing to go out, but at the same point, I thought the lads, for a large majority, gave a good account of themselves.
And you're ninth in the championship, in a healthy position. Is the challenge to keep up your form from Christmas now into these run of fixtures you've got coming up January into February?
Yeah, of course. I think it's a relentless league, right? We know how difficult it is. We know that every game such a challenge. I think is take so many of the positives from the first half, the first block of the season to where we're at now, and try and relay some of those experiences and use those going forward and become a better version of ourselves. So it's unpredictable with the window, and already you see quite a few teams invest in large sums, so that that brings changes in the back half of the season. But the group are in a good spot. We've performed really well. Definitely heading in the right direction. The challenge is to try and continue that now.
One or two doubts after Saturday's game. You can tell me if they remain doubts or now fighting fit. Rob Dickey missed the game. Is he back and available?
Yeah, Rob's been training this week, so he seems to be over it and looks okay.
And Marcus McGuane suffered, I think, a concussion or a head injury. How's he?
Yeah, he's concussed, so Marcus will be ruled out for the weekend, unfortunately. He's not too bad. He's kind of going through the stages that you have to return to play. So, yeah, he's okay.
Other players on the training ground, it's just a catch-up really. So Eamon Benarous, a lot of City fans wishing him well and looking forward to the day he returns to the field. We don't want to put any pressure on his young shoulders, but where's he at in his comeback?
Yeah, he's actually been away for some of his treatment recently for a change of kind of setting and environment, and actually sat with him this morning to discuss it and go through it. And he's heading in the right direction. I think when you've had the volume of injuries he's had in the same area, I think it makes it more difficult. But I think the biggest bit of the conversation we've had is, and knowing Eamon's character extremely well, sit with him quite a few times, is he's going to give it absolutely everything to give the best shot possible of coming back, and we're here to support him and do everything we can to help them try and do that.
Is he still injured, and if so, what's the timescale of when you might see him back on the grass?
Yeah, he's still injured. He's expecting hopefully in the next sort of 3 or 4 weeks to be kind of building things up, and then it's a case of seeing how he responds. I think that's always the challenge of putting times on it. You up it, up the stage you're at, and if the body doesn't respond great, then obviously it delays things. As you can sometimes go quicker if it responds better. So we have to work off of what the players present, but yeah, we also have to be a little bit more careful of the fact that he's obviously got a history of it as well.
Well, we look forward to the day he returns, and it's 12 months since Adam Murphy joined the club. How close is he to knocking on the manager's door and maybe being in first team contention?
Yeah, Murph's got to keep his head down. I think he was unfortunate in terms of obviously pre-season to pick up the injury, and he's had a few since he's been here, very stop-start. So again, I think that's the bit for Murph. I think it's building up load, building up, adapting to the intensity, the way of working, etc. So yeah, Murph's one that's got to keep working.
Because he's also a young player, so realistically, might it be next season before we see him in contention to play for the first team?
Yeah. I think so. I think when you look at it, I think in terms of just the volume of games he's played, even at 21's level, it's a big jump from 21s to first team. So I think in terms of needs to concentrate on maintaining fitness and playing games.
I'm going to ask you about 3 more players. George Earthy, obviously on loan from West Ham. How do you assess his time at Ashton Gate so far? There has been the extenuating circumstances with the injury, but I bet he's really looking to kickstart things in the second period of the season. Yeah,
definitely. George is a really intelligent footballer. I know he'll be frustrated probably not to have more minutes, but I think when you look at it, it's a first loan. I think it speaks volumes for how we've used him, and using him in important games and important times. I think shows the trust we have in him, and then it's about grabbing it. I think obviously when he came on Plymouth, had a terrific opportunity to win the game, and they're the margins. I think when you go from from being an academy player on the fringes to you want to force your way in the team. It's grabbing those opportunities, and terrific to work with. He's someone that's going to have a bright future in the game, and he's going to keep his head down, keep working, which he does every single day. He pesters people to do extras constantly. So you saw at the weekend we play him 8, we've played him wing back, we've played him higher. He's just a really intelligent footballer.
Is he versatile, or do you see him in one particular role ideally?
No, I think there's always a danger, right? You have to be really clear on what your qualities are and try and nail down a position. I think for me, I think he's best higher up. When I look at him, central, that 10 role of triggering a press, and his link-up play is excellent. He can drop down, he can then join attacks. He's scored a lot of goals at 21s football as well, and I think in time that will start to happen as well. Ideally, we're going to push him now to try and get it out in games now when he comes on in impacts or whether he starts. I think that's the big bit for him is the goal contributions, the creation, the assists. I think that's the big bit. So much of the rest of his game, the defensive, the basics in possession are really good. It's that final bit.
Similar question for George Tanner, who we're getting to speak to today. Is one of the reasons you let Rob join Portsmouth is because, George, do you see him equally as a centre-back as a right-sided defender?
Yeah, George can do both. I think he did it last year. He's done it already. Obviously, saw at the weekend. I think he can play either of those positions. So George, obviously the injury. I thought he was in a good spot before the injury. So I know another one probably frustrated to miss a period. And I think it's one of those where it takes a little bit of time to get back to your level. And I think that there's still a lot more to come from George.
I think you were asked about Fally on Saturday about his performances on the pitch, but I don't think anyone's asked you about off the pitch. When people are talking about him, I guess some of it is one ear and out the other, but he also notices it. How important is it that he maintains his belief and confidence so that we start to see the best of him in a Bristol City shirt?
It's Fally, the same as all the lads. I think the confidence element, and again, I think that's where I come back to it. They're human, right? I think I think sometimes the expectation now is so high that. And rightly so. We're the professionals. We're here to deliver, but I also think it's understanding where people are at in their journey, and we've got a few. And the club has had previously, and we'll continue to have young players that need support, need opportunity, and confidence is a big part of that. So again, I think for me, it's how do you regulate it? How do you keep it yourself in that that sweet spot where it's it's not affected massively. And part of that's my job. Part of my job is to keep players in a good spot, same as them and the staff around them. We've got a terrific group of people here that try and give the lads everything, and ultimately confidence comes from actions. If you it's delivering. I think that's the biggest bit. So there's a lot of work that goes on, a lot of conversations, a lot of time spent with the players to try and make sure they're in the best spot come Saturday.
And Sam Bell, who didn't come on Saturday, you can only put so many players on the pitch at one time. Do you see him as a potential striker for Bristol City, or ideally would he play out wide where he can run at fullbacks and defences?
I think he can do two, the both. I think the other bit. I think he did really well in the games he came on as a 9. I was really pleased with the impact he had. Obviously, had another couple of nearly moments, which is the bit. I had a chat with him the other day about it actually. But what he gives you is pace, his timing of his runs. He obviously played there, previously in the academy, and again, I think it's something that we'll definitely look to in the future.
And I'm going to ask the question. It might be a one-word answer. Incomings, outgoings. Is there any news likely ahead of Saturday?
Unfortunately, not. No, not at the moment.
Okay. Coventry City. Frank Lampard in charge. What kind of difference is it? We're so used to facing a Mark Robins Coventry City. What's changed under Frank Lampard?
I think when you look at it, they've flipped between systems a little bit recently. So a 4 and a 5. They've got a few injuries, but they've still got the same quality of player. I think you only have to look at the money they've invested in the last sort of 18 months, 2 years on the squad to see, the level they've got. So they carry threats. And naturally, I think every week I say it, well organised, will be hard to beat and carry threats, and that's the margins I think at this level. So we know it would be an extremely tough game, and one where we have to take the form and the confidence from previous league games into it, and try and be the best version of ourselves. And
just finally, how do you contrast this week where you've not had a midweek game to next week where you've got Coventry away, Sheffield Wednesday away, and then a game at the weekend? Is it a very different week in terms of management coming up?
Yeah, of course, the rest becomes equally important. We've been able to train quite hard this week. And then, obviously next week it becomes slightly different. And I think the big bit is just, players in the team, not in the team, just being ready, because when it is, the travel as well. And it's such a demanding, period, it's making sure that everybody's ready to go.
Have a safe trip, thank you.
Thank you.
Liam, I'm sure you'd have watched the Wolves game back now multiple times. I just wondered if there was anything on a second, third watch that stood out good or bad that you perhaps didn't notice at the time.
No, I think we felt a lot of it during the game. I think hence we tweaked towards the end of the first half, and we actually pressed really well for sort of the first 5-10 minutes, and then naturally when you're up against good, intelligent players, they kind of solved the problem and got a little bit of success against our press. And that's where, again, the feeling at the time was to maybe be a little bit reserved, just sit in that high block and then be a bit more patient with the press, which I thought helped us second half. And then, the big bit, the speed of recoveries, I think, in terms of when you have a passage you're playing, you think you're through their block, their press, and you're progressing up the pitch. It's just the speed of recoveries and how quickly they get back into shape and make it difficult to create. Was some of the key bits, and again, I think there's some really good individual stuff. So, we've had a lot of kind of individual chats with the lads and bits around it, just to try and pull stuff from it.
The changes in that game, I know Marcus got injured pretty quickly after Jason came off. Is that predetermined in those sort of cup games? Because obviously Jason's played a lot of football, or was that situationally based more?
Yeah, the 91 was a little bit, before the game, just conscious there's not many. He's one, along with Zach, to be fair, that have played every minute of every game. So I think in terms of, especially 90 with, he's away in the summer on international. He'll be been away every international so far and played high minutes, and then he'll go away again. I think the challenge, especially going into the run, is that we want him fresh for the league games as best possible. And that's a combination of match minutes. It's a combination of also having depth. We can start Marcus and rest Birdie and bring Birdie on for 90. And like I said, we've got Joe Williams back, training this week as well. So again, I think when you look at the competition, we're able to now make little tweaks and changes like that. And that was ultimately the reason for it.
With Joe, is he in contention this week or just back in training in general?
Possibly a little early for him.
Similar with Sinclair Armstrong, because I know you mentioned he was training with Joe last week.
Yeah, similar, probably a little bit too early for the two of them. Yeah.
Is Sinks in particular someone you're going to have to be cautious with when you take that step to integrate him? I know you've mentioned with training you've had to ease him back in because of his profile. Is that the same with Mate?
Yeah, a little bit. I think common sense. The lads collect all the data, we have all the information, but there's also, I think, a huge element of just common sense. And when you've got someone so explosive, so powerful, so quick that it's had the injury he's had, of course you have to be a little bit careful. So again, he's back training, but you also need to build up a level of volume with it. So he's someone that we'll be sensible with, but at the same point we want to win games now as well.
Cam Fring as well. I know when we spoke, I think last time it was weeks, and you were going to get a bit of a specific idea of what that is. I just wondered where about that time frame is.
Yeah, it's still going to be a few weeks as yet. So probably not in January we won't see him.
Okay, perfect. You've already played Coventry twice this year. I know the manager's changed, but how much of an impact does that have when you've already got 2 looks at them? How much can that help you heading into Saturday's game?
It can. I think it was the second game in the season, so it was right early on, both of them. So it was so long ago now. I think if I probably look at the team that we played that day, it's different personnel now. With obviously Mark, and I think Marcus and Luke were here when we played them first time round, so we're probably different as well. So the same as them. So with the change, with how early it was in the season, I think of course we'll look at certain bits that we did and how we work, but again they're doing different things as well. So I think it's very much what they've done recently as opposed to using loads of previous.
You mentioned Scott Twine keeping him fit on Saturday, how important that was going to be for the second half of the season. Obviously, during his loan spell and the permanent move, he's had quite a few little issues, it feels like. Have you adapted anything you're doing with him on the training ground in particular, or how you use him in the games to try to avoid that happening again?
Well, you've probably seen we took him off a few games over Christmas. It was just such a heavy period that it's quite often easier to change players top end of the pitch. So again, I think we tried to manage him through that period. The weekend was his first 90 minutes for quite a while, so it was good to be able to get that into him. And then it's them working with him. I think I think that's the skill in it. It's not exactly this is how you do it every single week. I think you have to go off how they feel, what the programs look like, what the games look like, because the demands physically in one game to the next can look completely different. So the skill in it is having all the information, also using your eyes and having conversations with the player and how they feel.
Obviously, Ross and George Tanner also played first 90 minutes since they've been back from injury. How did they come through that? Have they come through okay? Is that something they're at a level of fitness now where they can do that game after game, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think the more you do it, the easier it becomes. I think it definitely. So, I think Ross similar. We've kind of built him up and Touchwood he's in a good spot. I think it's the same as George, obviously. So again, I think it's having those options is obviously a real good thing for us, and that we can make tweaks and changes, and that's where again I think when you look at the progress and the work we've done is added some depth and quality, but also the lads being clear on their roles, so we can make tweaks and changes, and people are able to step in and be quite clear on what's expected.
Just on transfers, I know it's not always the best topic of conversation, but you've mentioned wanting, if you could, to get a couple of faces in, but needing players out before. Is it a situation where if someone were to go, you're ready to act and know exactly what you want, as and when you can do that sort of business?
Yeah, I mean, there's conversations on that at the minute in terms of what's possible, what's not possible. So I have my ideal. I'm not the one that ultimately puts the money in. I totally respect that as well. So again, I think it's a case of seeing how the conversations go and what's possible.
I imagine in an ideal world it'd be permanent moves, but you used the loan market last January, you used it in the summer. Would that be something you consider this month as well? I
would personally, yeah. Like I said, it's not only my decision, I think, in terms of what we can do. So again, we have to get a little bit more clarity on that, in terms of what's possible. So the lads are ready to go. I think, the recruitment department do a terrific job and, try to work for now as well as the next window. But ultimately, yeah, we have to see what we can do.
I guess obviously you're kind of restricted about what happens above you. There's not been as much movement throughout the divisions as there has been in the past. Do you almost need stuff to start going above you and below you to open up that market for you?
Yeah, possibly. I think it's. I think you have to look at, and it's not always about adding, right? I think if you look at what we've done with the squad that we've had this season, I think it's how do you best keep that together. I think try and keep as many fit and available and work in what we've got. Ideally, what you don't want to do is lose a load, because I do think when you look at it, it's in a good spot. And then if you are going to add it has to be the right one that you think is going to really give you a push in the back half of the season, or whether it's beyond that. And then you also have to be realistic when you look at some of the. Not even the movement above us. I think if you look at the movement around us with some of the investment from some of the clubs, and there's the Championship's back to spending quite a bit of money. So again, I think we also have to manage expectation off the back of that as well, and seeing what other clubs are doing. So for me, like I said, I'm really pleased with the group we've got here, and again, I think it's about making sure that I control what we can, and that's making sure that we're best prepared for Saturday.